There we go.
Hey, welcome everyone. It's Irene and
Seth.
we had a little internet gremlin,
Yep.
which happens
Yep. Those gremlins.
when there's important stuff to share. So we will dive into all things SBSM very soon. We'll get a few people on here. No one has found us yet. So if you're watching the recording, bear with us.
Yeah.
We'll get going. In the meantime, for those watching the recording, if you're watching this now on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, this live stream is timely. It's time sensitive because today is the final day to register for my 12-week online curriculum called Smartbody SmartMind, also known as SBSM. So what Seth and I are going to do is we'll do a quick rundown of what SBSM is, really the features, what you get. I will be honest, it is almost impossible, and you can back me up here, to tell you exactly how this works for you internally. It's such a personal process, and what I really recommend is to watch some of our client stories, read some of our client testimonies. We've been posting a lot of these on my social media, and we have an entire playlist. I think there's a lot. There's dozens and dozens of stories, long form stories, not just quick, this helps me and now I'm better, like deep personal stories. We'll actually pop one in the chat that we just got today from a student who's been with us since 2017. So she's been doing this course for a long time. And she posts about her healing of psychological abuse from her narcissistic family who scapegoated her. So it's good to listen to these stories because it gets you into the real essence of where people are coming from. But we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can in 90 minutes. If you do have a question, post it in the chat. My amazing helper, Bonnie, is in there, and we have a document open so that if we miss something, we will see it on our Google Doc and we'll get to that question. If you're totally new here, my name is Irene Lyon, and a bit about me. I have a lot of training credentials in the healing arts, helping arts, specifically the Feldenkrais method, somatic experiencing, and something called somatic practice. Before that, I was in a lot of health and healing, fitness, nutrition, exercise science, rehab, and I've been doing this work for over 25 years now. And quick origin story, Smartbody SmartMind was created because I was on the road to burnout in my private practice. And it was very clear that people needed more than an hour with me. They needed to study consistently, deliberately, with good information and practices in the comfort of their own home, not rely on me every single week for years on end, because some clients were seeing me years on end once a week. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that those who have gone through Smartbody SmartMind have had healing changes way beyond anybody I worked with in private practice. Doesn't mean I didn't know what I was doing. You can only do so much with a practitioner. Do you have anything to say about that in terms of just the origin of this and how it might seem weird to do this work online without a therapist?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm still in private practice, so I work with clients one-on-one. And the ones who make the most gains and change the most and heal the most are the ones who understand that it's not just about coming to see me once a week. It's about doing the work in session, but then taking what you learn into your life through understanding the deep education about your physiology, about your nervous system, through taking in these, what we call neurosensory exercises, which are different ways of getting into the body and exploring the human system. And it's about implementing all that understanding and practice in your life. And when people get that, they can do a lot more transformative work in session, for one. So it can be a replacement for private sessions, or it can be a really powerful addition and support for doing really powerful work in private sessions, because it's kind of like you got the ball rolling already in your own relationship to yourself. And that's one really important thing about doing this work in your own home, is that, when you do work with a practitioner, there can sometimes be some pitfalls where maybe you're trying to please them or you're wanting to get your money's worth. And so you really, even though you were done, your system had enough after 15 minutes.
Yeah, you don't say anything.
You don't say anything. And you stay for the full hour and you sort of bear down.
And you go into shutdown.
And you end up going into one of your survival patterns to get through the session, right? So learning your own system in this really refined, delicate way is really, really helpful. And can be super supportive and transformative all on its own or as a complement to private sessions.
Yeah. Definitely. And many of our support team work with people from Smartbody SmartMind. So there'll be some members in SBSM who know they need a little extra help and a little therapeutic help. And it's a perfect adjunct because then they work with someone whom understands the material. They have the same lingo, the same language. They can say, oh yeah, go do the kidney adrenal lesson for your homework tonight, or go back to some of the Feldenkrais lessons because you've got a little stiffness in your back and pelvis. Like they can, and I'm sure, I hope you do that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They can kind of in a way, quote unquote, prescribe something for you to review. So that common language is super important. As I see some of the questions pop up, I'm going to dive into some specifics. But again, just a reminder, we only open up registration for short periods of time, typically twice a year. So this is the final day, Tuesday, to enroll into Smartbody SmartMind. The reason why we have a very short window is we want people who are ready and we want people who want to get in there, and we don't want to draw this out for weeks on end. And we want to get started because the school year, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, has started. We will run again, most likely around late February. What I will say is if there's a part of you that is hesitant and you'd rather push out till then, that's fine. Maybe finances aren't in order, that's fine. But let's say you have the resources to do this, you can swing it, and you're just thinking you're not going to have enough time, you're not ready. That I'm not ready and I don't have enough time, in my opinion, that never shifts and changes.
That's always a handy go-to.
I don't have enough time to do half the things I want to do, trust me. So, I think where you would be in 4 months compared to now by getting into this curriculum could be life-changing, and many people will say that. So you do have to go with your gut. I say go with your gut, go with your body more so than your mind. Yes, it might seem a bit scary. It is an investment. It's just under $2,000 US for a full tuition, or 12 payments of $197 over 12 months. So it is an investment, and like many of our students will say, we have someone in here who's already said it's a game changer. People will say this saved their lives. They can't imagine life without it. This investment will last you not just till you die, not to sound grim, but if you have children, if you are influencing people in your world, this will go into their system and they will shift their worlds. And so I'm going to pause there. I'm going to answer some quick questions. Someone asks, is this in German? It's not in German. The program is in English. At this point, we don't have the resources to translate. And one of the reasons why, and I'm hoping this changes, is my audio lessons have to be expressed and taught in a regulated way. They have to be embodied. And of course, that's my gift, is teaching that. And so I'm working on creating more students who can teach this stuff. And there are some folks that I'm teaching who are German, but if you can read English, if you can listen and notice what I'm saying and you comprehend, then you can do this course. We have many people of German speaking tongue, Spanish, Italian, French, Russian, you name it. And as long as you have a basic understanding and you can read, you can do a lot of this. And if anything, it'll improve your English. So yes, one day, but not quite yet.
That's an important thing just to clarify. That the neurosensory exercises, everything is presented in multiple formats for this reason. So you can, everything that is taught via audio is also available as a transcript, which you can read. Same with all the videos. the education, everything is transcribed. So
yeah. And so that'll lead me to, what do you get? So the actual content, there's three forms if we go into the bonuses, but the main bulk of the content is education and practice. The education comes in a couple of forms. I have a 5-part series called The Biology of Stress. For those that have done my smaller course, the 21-day tune-up, you know these. They're in SBSM. So that is a comprehensive analysis of our biology, stress chemistry, survival. You learn deep stuff about the vagus nerve, how memories are stored, how trauma releases, early trauma. You get exactly what I learned, what we would have learned in our somatic experiencing and early trauma practices. So it just cuts right down to what you really need to know. The other way you get education, I run training calls. There are 9 of them this season. I'm doing them live on Zoom, and they are added material. I love them. They're such a good way to learn, because not only is it theory, it's practice of feeling what you notice when you hear this education, and lots of stories, which are important for learning, and analogies. I love my analogies. And then the other form of education is your
Q&A calls.
Yeah, you want to talk about those?
Yeah, so there's also Q&A calls that are with me that I do weekly, except for the weeks that we take a break.
Yeah.
And they are what we call curated Q&A calls, because we have enough alumni who return each round now that you add that to the new members, there's thousands of people going through this course together. So there's more questions that I can answer individually. So what I do is I get a whole bunch of questions each week, and then I look through them and I pick the ones that seem most representative of the most people. So I try to get as much relevance to people's journey as possible without being able to answer every single question. And one thing that you may find is that a lot of people have the same questions. So even if you maybe don't have a question, you can show up for the Q&A call, and you can end up getting information that you didn't even realize you were looking for. But you're like, oh, that does apply to me, right? So
the Q&As are like another lecture, really.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They're deep learning, and I had a thought and then it left my brain. It'll come back. Someone asked here, what happens to the content for those who register for this round when the program reruns? Do we lose access to the lives? Okay, so no. So everything that is on the course site, the lessons, I'll talk about what those are in a second, the education, the training calls, the transcripts, the recordings, that all lives on the site for you to come back to at any time. So when we end our support, our moderation support, and we'll talk about that in January, I think it's January 13th to be exact, of 2024, you can still go into the site. You always have access to the site at any time of the day, whenever you want. And when we go back live, alumni, so if you join this round, that would make you an alumni next year, you can come back, participate in Seth's Q&As, you can ask questions. And if any added exercises, any tweaks, any improvements, I've improved the course a lot over the last 6 years.
It seems like every round we get something.
Something shifts, but so everyone who's been with me for the last 5 years, they keep getting improvements and upgrades. So again, it's a lot at the outset, but you have it for as long as we are in existence, and as long as the internet is in existence. And the other thing, you can download all of the lessons and all of the audios and save them on your computer on a hard drive. Not that I think the internet's going to go away, but
probably not. But yeah.
Okay, next one. Oh, someone here is a 21-dayer. So if you can't find your 21-day discount, so sometimes people don't see these emails, and I'm not sure why. So if you are a 21-day nervous system tune-up member, you should be getting our specific emails written for you, where there's a special discount link, because, and this is something I'll say, when you do the 21-day nervous system tune-up, you get that money back, or you get a refund when and if you join SBSM. So the SBSM tuition for you as 21 dayers is $300 less of the full tuition. If you can't find that link, Ellie, email us at support, just support at Irene Lyon. Of course, we'll have to verify that you are a 21-day member, and then we'll give you that link.
And don't worry if there may be a panic, like, oh my God, if I don't get an answer today, don't worry, we'll get you in. Sometimes support gets a large volume of emails at this time of year, so you will get a reply if you've emailed them already. Don't worry if it doesn't happen today, you will still be able to get in, no worries.
Yeah, if you show your desire and intention to be with us, and for some reason we can't get back to you today, I doubt that will happen. Our team is working really hard to get all your questions answered, but we'll get you in.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to cover this one?
Sure.
Mystic Jojo?
Sure. Do you suggest a support? Oh,
sorry. Let's get why is that doing that?
There we go. Do you suggest a support system when in a blocked place or a triggering experience or sensations? Well, yeah. Support systems are crucial, and that's what we teach in SBSM. There can be different kinds of support systems.
You don't need people.
You don't necessarily. That's good.
It's good.
Like having a team, having friends, having a pet, right? Having plants. There's all sorts of different levels of support system. What we really work on highlighting is your internal support systems and also external. So one of the first lessons you'll encounter in SBSM is researching your resources, which is about discovering and really highlighting for yourself, these are all the things that I go to when I'm feeling overwhelmed, so that you just sort of firm that up, and that is a support system. But ultimately what we're teaching is sort of this internal support system, which is what the neurosensory exercises are, different ways of learning to work with being in that blocked place or being in that overwhelming situation in the moment in real time. Now you have tools that you can apply, and that is fundamentally the support that we're wanting to introduce to everybody, is their own ability to, as we say, become their own medicine, such that you have your own support that is internal. But absolutely, it's good to have friends, family, practitioners. Yeah,
but it's not essential.
It's not essential.
And I really want to highlight that, because for some people, they might have no one because their family systems aren't good for them, right? And I do want to speak to that, because what people will say, and we've seen this over and over again, is as they get connected to their body, they never feel alone because they are connected to themselves. But when we're living in a state of dissociation, either mental or somatic and environmental, if we are not aware of what is out in the world that is good, because there is a lot of good stuff out in the world, contrary to what the media might tell you. When you can connect to that tree, the sky, the stars, the sun, the earth, the squirrels, the birds, you actually start to sense that kinship with the earth in a very different way. And that can become a solid support system. And then eventually the people who you're meant to meet and align with, they start to trickle in. That's what we see. So,
there can be a pruning process for a while where you learn, like, this person in this situation, that isn't good for me. And that sometimes happens before the new good things start to show up. That's also something to be aware of.
At this point, we don't have any scholarships for anyone. So what I suggest, if this is out of budget, start with the 21-day nervous system tune-up course. That is $297, or there's a 3-pay, I think it's of $105. If that is still out of reach, there is so much on my site that you can start to literally work through step by step. There are, my YouTube channel here has, I think, over 450 videos with lots of education. On my site, there are free resources, audio samplers, where I am guiding you through the basics. We can't get into the deep stress chemistry work in that format, but you can start with those. And we have students who start with those, and that's all they do for like a year. And not because they don't actually have the funds. In this case, I'm thinking of Samantha, who was speaking to us yesterday on my alumni panel. She didn't have the capacity to even do the 21-day course. So she just did one audio sample exercise over and over and over again. It was the 4 steps to calm overwhelming emotions and sensations. So if you look, we do have these elements for those who can't invest at the moment. Is hypnotherapy a good modality to go along with your course? It can be. I actually just experienced hypnotherapy for a series of sessions the last year. I really enjoyed it, but I can tell you this. There was a moment, and it was for a very specific thing. There was a moment 2 hours in to this session where my eyes had been closed that long, and I could feel if I didn't stay grounded and connected to my body and my sensations, I would have dissociated. It was so intense. And a lot of good psychological, even mind-body therapies are great, but if we don't have the ability to stay connected to ourselves and tethered to the here and now, we can like rocket into another galaxy and not know that we're there. So again, obviously Milton Erickson, who was really the grandfather of hypnotherapy, was a brilliant man, just like a lot of the other psychologists, Freud and Jung were too. They have a place, but the work that we do is the foundational root core of our entire physiology working properly. Do you have anything else to say to that?
That's pretty much it, but it ties nicely into that next question, which is there anybody who should not join SBSM? Meaning, how functional do you need to be mentally and physically? Quite debilitated right now, and I have an external situation that's triggering. So if you can watch this video and take it in, then you're probably able to do SBSM. We don't recommend it for people who are dealing with severe mental issues like psychosis or schizophrenia, bipolar. I mean, you have to have some stability. That being said, there are still people who were living with those things, and SBSM was the only thing that helped. So it's a bit of your call. Physically, there's been many people who have started SBSM when they were bedridden. Samantha, who you just mentioned, when she started doing that free resource, she was bedridden. We've had many people who could not get out of bed and who started this work. So I hope that answers your question. It's hard to give a really clear answer because everyone's different, but generally speaking, if you can take in this video right now, if you can understand what we're saying,
you can nod your head.
You can nod your head. If you can maybe feel a little bit of something as I'm saying this, you can do it.
And we've even had people who have been homeless living in their car.
That's true. That's true.
And they've gotten out of those situations. So I think this is where your personal drive to want to learn this stuff and be a part of this curriculum and learn from it is important.
And I see the same person is saying that they actually are a 21-day member.
Oh, great.
So if you can do 21 days, you can absolutely do SBSM.
And I'll speak to that because some people who do 21 days, they actually struggle more in 21 days than an SBSM. And that isn't because the 21-day tune-up isn't good, but it doesn't get into the deeper somatic physiology stress organ work that many of us need. So if we were brought up with early trauma and utero trauma, high levels of stress due to surgeries when we were young, or it was true, abuse from our family school systems, that stuff is pre-verbal. It is in our cells. And we really need to work at the organ level, the layers of our skin, fascia, bone, diaphragms, joints, everything that's in SBSM. These are the neurosensory exercises. We need to work with healthy aggression. We need to understand toxic shame, all these deep, sticky things. And we just can't get to that in 21 days. And so I think for some, the way that SBSM is paced and laid out is actually more titrated than 21 days.
But more suited for people with early developmental trauma for sure.
Which is
most people.
And I'm going to say, I didn't realize I had early trauma until recently. Right. And it came down like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh, I guess I did.
Welcome to the club.
I had really good co-regulation and I didn't have any shame or any of that or any abuse verbally or physically, but it was different stuff. So the other thing too, I caught a note on my Instagram channel and someone said, I need to heal fast. If I do the 21 days, do I get all the lessons at once? Because I want to do them as fast as I can.
Oh, man.
This doesn't work. So that's the other thing. When you do register for 21 days, you get all of it. And that's just how the nature of the course is. But you can't force and willpower yourself through this and do more. It's like, eating a supplement because you might need a boost of vitamin C is good, but it doesn't mean you should take the whole bottle, right? So there's a titration, a slowness to this work that is important. It's just like you can't teach a newborn baby everything in the first week. Yeah. I hope everyone kind of chuckles at that. Yeah. Actually really feel that. If you have a newborn baby, whether it's yours or you're helping care for one, you can't teach that little one everything in 1 week or even 21 days or even 12 weeks. You need this constant tending, attunement, co-regulation, nurturing, listening, exploration. It takes time. Yeah. And that is maybe one of the biggest differences that I've seen in Smartbody SmartMind compared to other online programs that I've heard about. We're doing, I'm going to say this fully, sincerely, what we're doing in the lessons is really boring.
Yeah, oftentimes.
It's not crazy catharsis, and I'm not getting you to shake and instigate things. It's very subtle, it's very gentle, and I will say a lot of times our most senior alum will laugh and say, Irene, I thought you were insane when you had me do this thing with my hand and just touch my wrist. And then I started crying. And then I started having all this grief finally come out. And so there's a simplicity to the curriculum that is why I believe it works so well. And it's got really great methodologies baked in. Do you have anything to add to that, Seth?
Yeah, just the other day I saw a thing on Facebook that was like,
that was yesterday.
It was yesterday. Yeah. Heal your trauma. Heal a lifetime of trauma in 1 hour. Yeah, we are so tuned towards the quick fix in this culture. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who take advantage of that. It simply won't work. You can't heal this stuff quickly. And it's because of the nervous system. It's so intricate. These survival energies that are what trauma is, unresolved survival energies, those are happening at the autonomic level. And that autonomic system touches everything and impacts everything. So you can't change that quickly. I mean, really be wary of anybody who says they can heal your trauma in any amount of time.
Even if they say a year.
Because they don't know.
They have no freaking clue.
No, everyone is individual. And if they're making some promise about a time in which you can do it, forget it. Run away.
Yeah.
It's not how it works. Everyone is individual. And that's why our SBSM is unique. One of the first things that we encourage people to do is discover what pace is right for you. And that alone takes a lot of trial and error sometimes. It's like, oh, really? I can only do 15 minutes of this without becoming overwhelmed. Many people have no idea what it's even like to engage with some kind of learning that isn't like about bearing down and getting through it, right? So this is about discovering a whole new way of learning that actually is in alignment with your true capacity. And that's a process of discovery. And everyone's different. So yeah, it's not a quick fix. It's about taking the time to really learn and discover in the way that's going to support you and your unique system. And this is why once you're an alumni, you just come back over and over again as much as you want. It's about, a lifestyle change that is it's a work in progress.
Yeah. What I want to add to that, because there's many here, I think, who are new and this is new to them. When we think of like healing, like I'm going to go heal my trauma, I'm going to go regulate my system, I'm going to work with this therapist, counselor, whatever. There's this, I think, idea, maybe it's a projection we have from the medical model where you go to the doctor, they give you something, you take it, or you get a procedure, it happens, or you go get a massage, they fix some scar tissue, it's changed. So there are times and places for that kind of medicine, hands down. This is super different. And it's very important to me, and I reiterate this over and over and over again in the course and the training calls, as does Seth in the Q&As. You have to see this not as healing, but as learning. You're learning about yourself. You're learning about how your body works. This is stuff that we're just not taught. And some might say, oh, well, if I just live in the natural world, I'll just naturally start to heal. We will not.
I tried that.
He tried that, and it doesn't work. And the reason why is because we've come so far away from living with the natural world that we are amnesic. We have amnesia around the intelligence of our body. It just isn't there. Some of us might have differing degrees, and we're all on different spectrums of where we are. But for the most part, the general population has very little idea that they have this intelligent body that can heal without the help of outside sources. Again, I'm not saying you might not, I've had surgeries. Those were important, right? But this stuff is about learning. And then the effect of that learning is therapeutic. So that's the other difference with SBSM compared to, say, working with a coach or a therapist. We're not therapizing you. You're not telling us all your problems and then we tell you what to do. You can share your experience in the introduction, or if you're asking a question, you're free to say, this is my background, this is my history. But our team, myself, Seth, we will guide you back to your own learning. We will guide you back to the material, and that can be a little squirmish for some because people just want to be told what to do. And so if you're looking for that, this isn't it. You have to take self-responsibility. You have to be interested, even a tiny little bit, in understanding what it's like to relearn how to learn. And our school system, and I've been talking about this a lot, if you follow me on Instagram, it messed us up with things like this, these gold stars that people, put on your assignments and grades. And if you do a good job, we applaud you. But if you don't, you suck, right? And that comes into our imprint of how we engage with learning. So in SBSM, not only are you learning nervous system stuff, which is super important, you're actually getting a whole apprenticeship on how to be love learning again. And when you can love learning, you can figure out anything. So I wanted to put that in there because that's another really big difference to how this curriculum is different. We're not going to encourage you with pats on the back and like, yay, you made it through lab 1, awesome. We're not going to do that. We're going to encourage you to go at your pace and you congratulate yourself.
Yeah, notice how it feels for yourself to have completed that lesson.
Yeah.
What's your experience like there, right? It's a different way. It's not about reward and punishment.
No.
And so many of us are so tuned to that as being like the way that it can take a while to break that habit of learning. Yeah.
Huge. And if you're in that way of needing that reward, or you're expecting punishment, that's a tough way to live for the rest of our lives. Do you want to pick one that's there? There's also some. They're all there. They're back. Okay.
Yeah. I found you a week ago. I really need this, but I'm thinking to do first the 21 days. Would that be enough for now? I first want to see if this is for me. Sure. There's many ways you can dip your toe in. 21 days could be a great way. There's, like we said, free resources on Irene's site, audio samplers that are sort of, they're neurosensory exercises that are delivered. So you don't even have to do the 21 day. You could just do the 15-minute neurosensory exercise to pause and de-stress. That's on irenelyon.com under the free resources. So many ways to dip your toes in, see if it resonates for you.
The other thing I'll say, Chantel, is you can try those neurosensory exercises today, right? If you haven't. One thing I might suggest if you haven't is to go to it's called the Healing Trauma Video Training Series. It's 3 videos. Those videos are great. I look a little different because I'm a lot younger, but there's a 20-minute neurosensory exercise in that. And that's one of my favorite ones. Try that, see how you feel, watch the first video, see what you think. There is a 30-day refund window for Smartbody SmartMind. So what happens is if a person purchases SBSM, and this is full pay or the 12 pay, and we of course want you to do the work. We don't want you to just have it sit and you just meditate on the fact that it's on your laptop. Like, you have to do the work, and you can try it out for 4 weeks. And if you're like, yeah, this isn't working, this isn't for me, I don't like this, we will refund your money within 30 days. That's the key, is you have to let us know within 30 days, minus a processing fee of $50. So, you know, that's one way. If you can financially make this happen now, and then let's say it really works for you, then you have it. And then when you do join SBSM, you get 21 days as part of as an alum to SBSM. Yeah. So then you can go through that. But the 21 days, because I see a few more questions, it does not contain the deeper lessons. And I've already said this, we don't get into healthy aggression, these sorts of things. So again, if you know that from doing some of my little audio samplers, this feels good and you can make it work, I would get in now. Yeah. Personally.
Yeah. Okay. Before that one, I saw a brief question that asked if the 21-day member discount applies to the 12 pay. Yes, it does.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just so you know.
Oh yeah.
And this next one, do we learn how to connect with suppressed emotions during this program or the 21-day tune-up? Because how can I release it if I have no contact with it? Absolutely. You have to have contact with it to release it. As we say, you got to feel it to heal it. That being said, we always encourage people, again, to titrate their experience. We don't want to dive into the trauma vortex, as we call it. We want to develop the capacity to approach, go away, touch in, touch out, stay connected to the environment, right? This isn't catharsis. This is about a very educated and titrated way of going into emotions. That being said, absolutely, more so in SBSM than in 21 days, because in SBSM, we're working with the systems called the diaphragms, which is where a lot of emotion is held in the human system. We're working with the joints, which is where a lot of emotion is held in the human system. We're working with the viscera, the organs. So more so in SBSM, there's going to be many ways of getting into the areas of your body that are holding the emotion. Some in 21 days as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, to me, 21 days is about capacity building and building foundation and getting the basic education. Yeah. And then SBSM is like fine-tune apprentice work, right? You are being more laser-like with these spaces and places that hold sensation, which lead to the emotion. So if we can't sense our bodies, we can't process emotions. This is why you'll hear someone say, like, I have never cried. I don't remember crying, or I can't get angry. I know I should be angry, but nothing is coming out. That's a problem. If we can't cry, if we can't get angry, if we can't feel joy and surprise and shock and even fear, right? Feeling real threat is important when there is an actual threat. But if we're shut down and not into this body, we can't get that health and healing out of us, which is super important.
And I'll just add the flip side to that is people who get completely overtaken by their emotions out of the blue, like a little thing happens and they're just a mess and a wreck on the floor. That also isn't really processing. That's just reliving and sort of recycling what's going on. We also work with ways, because when that's happening and there's very little connection often to the sensations, there's a loss of connection to the environment. It's like I said, diving into that trauma vortex, getting sucked in. So it's also teaching ways to not do that as well. So it can work from both ends of the emotional spectrum.
Yeah. I've been holding my tongue on something, so I'm just going to say it. No. For some of you, you might have seen a fun video meme that we created the other day. Had the Jaws theme song and then Rihanna and Eminem. You can find it if you haven't seen it, but I'll explain it. It's a video that's been going around of two guys on a golf course, probably in Florida, and I thought it was an alligator. Someone said it's a crocodile. Doesn't matter. It was a prehistoric reptile. Was big on the green, and the image or the video is one golfer is walking and he sees it and he startles. And he has his golf club. And then the next clip is chill dude, hands in his pocket. He walks up, he taps alligator, crocodile on the butt, and girl goes into the water and is safe and fine. So the video is a metaphor for how we deal with intense emotions, intense sensations, thoughts. When we have regulation, we can feel or see a threatening thing inside or outside, and we don't go into more survival. Or maybe there's a tiny little bit, but it's sort of like dulled, right? If we have really good regulation, we can feel the most intense pain, and we feel it, but it's neutral. We can feel the most intense sensation, emotion, and it's neutral. That doesn't mean that we're not red in the face and crying or sad or joyful, but we're not engaging and labeling it as bad or good. Now, the other thing that's interesting with this video, because I got a lot of like, come on, it's a reptile, Irene. That thing is going to eat you. And it's like, yes, if you provoke it. And this comes back to how disconnected we've become with the natural living world. Now, when we have orientation on board and we can connect to our environment, we will see well before we get startled that there's a threatening animal there. And we will go the other way. We won't get startled. And my sense is that first golfer was not paying attention.
No. You can see he's just walking, all of a sudden, whoa, oh my God. Right.
And that's a part that is actually really important, because if we don't have connection with our external world, we will get eaten, quote unquote, by the reptile. We will get hit by that car. We will trip over our kids' Lego and faceplant into the coffee table. We won't see these things. And so while it's a metaphor, humans have lived with predators for millennia, right? And we get into trouble if we surprise them or we provoke them. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? So I wanted to add that in because someone was like, that's too much, Irene, don't go there. I'm like, okay, I gotta go there. Because it's important. You will become safer in your environment by regulating your nervous system.
Yes. It's also about the difference between reacting and responding.
Yes, good one.
The first guy is in reaction. It's an autonomic response, startle response, shock, right? Then he's retreating, he's in flight, right? That's a reaction. The second guy sees what's happening and responds appropriately. And that's the difference. And it's very significant that it's a reptile, because a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with is from the reptilian brain, right? That's where the survival centers are. So it's a metaphor, and it's a pretty apt one.
And I'm going to speak, there's no question on this, but I'm going to speak to it quickly on phobias. A lot of people are afraid of things like spiders, insects, and of course, reptiles and other mammals. And we had a student who shared that she would be the person that would like kill the spider. And, I don't want this in my space, where she would react, become survival based. And after doing SBSM for quite a while, she now befriends the spider, talks to it, and helps it outside where it's supposed to be. And it's a small example of how we become more connected with that natural living world, and we help other creatures. All right. There was one on grief.
I'm experiencing traumatic grief from a sudden loss with ruminations and pain. Might this be helpful and not activating beyond my capacity?
Yes. I remember this was years ago. One of our students had lost her husband of, I think, like 60 years suddenly, which happens. And these things happen. And she started working on SBSM, and rather than being in her head, and the loss is real. You need to grieve that loss if someone that you deeply love is gone. But when you get your body back on board, there's more space for those ruminations to go. It doesn't just sit in the head and loop. You become more connected to the environment, to yourself. And I'll never forget, because it was bittersweet, she went through one day not thinking about him. And then towards the end of the day, she realized that she had just been in her body, living her life. And then, of course, that came with dual emotions. One was joy that she had gotten through a day without in that mental grieving and rumination. But then she felt guilty for not thinking about him. And then that's something you've got to work with, right?
Yeah.
But yes, so much goodness can come when we get our regulation on board and we get back into our body around this stuff.
Totally.
All right.
Yeah.
You want to get that one?
Yeah.
Just
What percentages is the experiential part of the program? So this is from someone who's done 21 days and watched tons of YouTubes and blogs and all that stuff. Yeah, it's mostly experiential. In 21 days, it's sort of a little bit more equally divided. I think there's the 5 biology of stress videos and then maybe 9 neurosensory exercises in 21 days. In SBSM, it's more like 30 some neurosensory exercises. 36, yeah. So it's largely experiential. There is the additional learning, like we said, of the Q&A calls and the training calls, which is a deepening of the theory and learning. But the neurosensory exercises themselves form the bulk of the program.
Yeah. And that's really, where you get into apprenticing with your body. All right. Can I heal completely if I don't get body work done combined with the inner work like SBSM? It depends on what you're healing from. So it really depends. So I'll use myself as an example. I've had so many physical injuries in my world. I need body work because of scar tissue, various parts of my body that have arthritis, old concussions, whiplashes. So I need help working with that. That being said, I'm learning how to work with those pieces more by myself now, but I still see regular body workers for the things I need. So it depends. If you can, wonderful. Like if you can get some body work done when doing this, wonderful. Because what will also happen is when you do the body work, or it could be Chinese medicine or anything where you're having a bit more manual work done, you will be more connected with your body, and the treatment will go deeper. Yeah. I remember the first time I did acupuncture in my 20s, I thought it was a joke.
Right.
I'm like, I don't feel anything. And that's true. I couldn't feel anything because I was so frozen. Now, when I get an acupuncture point, I feel it go right through my organ, right down to my big toe. And I'm like, whoa, and so this is the thing, is when we have more of this regulation on board, the body work we do is that much deeper.
And just one thing to add to that, it also makes you way more tuned about who you pick as your body worker. Because one of the things about body work combined with this somatic trauma work, which is also body work, to be clear, it's just, yes, it's internal mostly. We do have some lessons that are about physically making contact with your tissues. But when we combine physical manipulation with trauma work, if that practitioner is not safe, it doesn't truly feel safe to us, if they're not trauma informed, if they don't know that we may need to say stop and have some emotions, right? When you're working with the tissues, you can unlock stuff. So it's very important, if you have trauma, when you're seeking out a body worker, that they be the right fit. And getting this work, the inner work, more on board will make you much more informed about picking out those people that are going to be really helpful.
Yeah. And what will happen is, as you become more attuned to what safety actually is, as Seth said, you will feel nervousness or dysregulation in a person's hands when they treat you.
Yeah.
And that's also how you become more discerning. But here's the thing, if we were brought up by a mother or a father who were dysregulated, and the only touch we've ever experienced is nervous hands, that just is normal to us. Right. But when you feel touch that is actually connected and like clear and safe, it's a whole different game. And for many of us, we've never known what that's like. So you will become more picky.
Much more picky.
True story. I was getting some reflexology done this summer. I had to get up and leave 10 minutes in because it was terrible. It was terrible. It was terrible. I don't think she actually she didn't know how to do reflexology. I think they were lacking a therapist that day, and they put the manicurist in, and I could feel my stress physiology going up and up. And I tried to go into a different zone, and I'm like, no, Irene, you're going to go into dysregulation if you stay here for another hour. And so I kind of lied. I got up and I said, I don't feel well, which was true. and I pointed to my stomach. She didn't speak English. I just bolted. I fled the situation. I would not have done that 10 years ago. I wouldn't even have known. I just would have like, oh, this is a shitty reflexology session. I guess I'll just stay here.
Yeah.
I lost my money, but it wasn't worth me being dysregulated for our entire evening.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so bad.
Yeah.
So bad.
I'm looking at the free resources in the 21-day program. So can someone get all the benefits of SBSM from the aforementioned resources? No, there's a reason that SBSM costs what it does. It's the full enchilada. It's pretty much everything that you need in terms of understanding and practicing somatic nervous system based trauma work. So you're not going to get that from 21 days in the free resources. No. You can certainly get started though and do a lot of good work with those things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Some say that one should prioritize nervous system stabilization over emotional release. So yes, and I'm going to say we should prioritize nervous system regulation.
Yeah.
Stabilization is really not a term we would use because the nervous system is never just stable. We want it to be resilient and in flow and in regulation. Emotional release, believe it or not, but nowhere in our SBSM curriculum do we say to someone, let's do some emotional release.
No.
It actually is never talked about, except for when I get into working with and teaching you guys about anger and healthy aggression. But even then, it's not about anger. It's about the sensations and the movements that we make to facilitate that when it comes up. Emotions will come when we're regulated. Emotions will come when we have connection to our somatic, our physiology and the environment, and we can track the sensations. Again, emotions come from the organs. They get interpreted in the brain. They're not a thought-based thing. Do you have anything to add to that, Seth?
Well, yeah, I mean, emotions, when we are regulated, it's like, we can handle and process the emotions. Emotions also come, of course, when we're dysregulated. Emotions can take us over. That's a big part of what being traumatized is about, is just living in our emotions, getting jerked around from one to the next, or the flip side, not feeling anything, being numb. In any case, it's always beneficial to support regulation first and not really focus so much on the emotions. They will come as they organically are ready to come in the process, which is why we don't ever highlight emotional release. We highlight working with the physiology, building regulation, learning about yourself, learning about your resources, so that you have the tools to work with the emotions that organically arise.
Next question, I understand quite well. Have people healed from skin conditions like eczema using SBSM? So I know that people's skin has improved. I don't have specific stories of our alum, but I've heard this. I am someone who suffered severe skin problems. If you go to my site, there's some images where I'm covered in what looks like third-degree burns. It was more than eczema. It was the expulsion of chemical trauma. I was exposed to way too many chemicals in utero through infancy, childhood, and into my teenage years. So it depends on what the root cause is of the skin condition. For some, it might be chemical in nature. For others, it could be an actual allergy to things like gluten, eggs. Often I find it's the pesticides and the chemicals. So if we're not eating organic food, that can be a big one. Another big culprit, sadly, to eczema are pharmaceuticals. The adjuvants in certain pharmaceuticals that stimulate irritation in our nervous system and cause reactions. Skin, while it can detox ourselves, it's not meant to be the master detoxifier of our body. We want our kidneys and liver and gut, lungs to detox. And so when the internal organs are struggling, the lymph, I forgot to mention. So when our internal organs are struggling because of nervous system dysregulation, they will not be able to detox properly through the pathways that they're supposed to. And then the skin tries to detox, and then that's where we get these rashes. So I wish it was a simple example, but it is more than just nervous system healing with skin. The other thing I'm finding is a lot of people don't have enough good fat in their diet, right? Just because of all the packaged foods we eat, fast food, the bad things like canola oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, these are all inflammatory in nature. So getting back to natural fats, animal fat, olive oil, coconut oil is super important.
Yeah, skin's a complex one.
Skin's pretty darn complex because it's also it's the largest organ that we have.
Yeah.
It's also our protection. It's a boundary.
Yeah.
But for some, the solution can be as simple as figuring out if there's a food allergy. But from my experience, it's a bit more tricky than that.
Yeah.
All right, next one.
Does orientation help me to come out of freeze mode? I'm completely in freeze mode. Possibly. It could also potentially make you go back into freeze. This is the uniqueness of each person, right? So orientation is about connecting to the external environment and ultimately our internal felt experience in relationship to that environment. So it's the mind, body, environment connection that we're cultivating with orientation. For someone who has grown up, say, with things that are so overwhelming that the only solution was to go into freeze and dissociate, the thought of coming into the environment and into their body's experience of the environment can be overwhelming. So if that is the situation, again, it's about titration. It's about learning to orient in different ways, in tiny doses. We have a few different lessons on orientation. It may be that you do like a minute of it and then you leave it. Yes, ultimately it can help you come out of freeze. It's just that you, again, need to learn what is your unique system capable of.
And from my experience, it's not enough.
It's not enough on its own.
Yeah,
No.
I was in deep freeze when I started this work, and I remember the SE practitioner had me orient, and I thought she was insane.
Yeah, this is doing nothing.
So that's the other thing. So I'm going to speak to this. It's interesting because when our alumni talk about their favorite exercises, they always say orienting.
Yeah.
Hands down. And I was thinking about this earlier because I know they're doing more than orienting. They're working with all these organs. They're working with the stress chemistry. They're working with healthy aggression, all these things. But what happens is when we get regulation on board, yes, we might go back and work with the organs, for example, but our natural default is to orient to the world around us. It goes back to the reptile thing that we said a second ago. Like when you are orienting naturally, that shows that you're regulated. So that's why I think our alum talk about orienting ad nauseum. When I know that they've done way more neurosensory exercises within the curriculum, but it's because, on a given day, you don't want to be just constantly working on your gut and constantly working on healthy aggression. That isn't needed every day, but what is needed is to take in our environment, to walk outside, to smell the air, to feel the rain, to clean up your mess. I've got a messy desk right now, right? And to orient to what needs to be done. Dishes have to be done. That has to be done. Da 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 da. So I just had that thought earlier today.
No, that sparked something in me because I'm thinking about my own healing journey and these moments that started to build as I was gaining regulation, where when I would be outside and orienting, it started to happen spontaneously and naturally. I didn't have to think about it. And that is how all mammals are meant to be. All creatures with this nervous system that we have are supposed to always be oriented to their environment and their felt sense of it. It's something that all other mammals do. So we're these weird creatures who have come away from that because of what we've experienced. But another thing that I'll notice, which I think is part of why people highlight orienting, is that I discovered that there started to be these moments where in orientation, it was like rediscovering wonder, rediscovering the sense of what it's like when I was a little kid before I got so traumatized. And it's like the feel of the sun on your skin and the way it comes through the leaves and how like I just feel the air on my arms. It was like rediscovering this richness of human experience and almost innocence and wonder that had been lost for a really long time. And that is something that is really profound. And again, it doesn't come just from orienting, it comes from all the work. Yeah. But it's something that shows up in that experience of orienting very beautifully.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see kids kind of like people will say, oh, they're tuned out
like,
when a toddler,
yeah.
And it's like, actually, they're taking everything in.
Yeah.
Right. And that also shows how disconnected we are with what infants and children are doing when they pause and they just stare. Right. They're feeling, they're sensing.
Yeah. So is the aim to be able to regulate ourselves faster? And when we experience new layers come up, how long usually do they last to integrate? Is that covered in SBSM? And then part 2 is self-compassion, an ultimate tool that we can foster and gather as a resource to really help heal trauma and dis-ease. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Part 2 is easy.
Part 2 is easy. Yes, absolutely. And everything in SBSM is about self-compassion. Yeah. It's about self-connection. I mean, compassion comes from connection, right? Compassion can be a mental process where like we do our gratitude journal and we write about, and it can do nothing.
It can do nothing
right?
at all.
So it's about the connection to the self, yeah. which is the compassion, ultimate compassionate act. Yeah. Learning how to connect to yourself in a deep way. And that absolutely is the ultimate tool for doing all this work, is the connection to the self. Mm-hmm. Right? First part, do you want to get that one?
Yeah. Is the aim to be able to regulate ourselves faster? So as a quick answer, yeah. When we have more regulation, when we have regulation on board, when we have more capacity on board, our system swings back to baseline, to regulation, to what we would call the real window of tolerance within seconds. The second part, when we experience new layers come up, how long do they usually last to integrate? I can't answer that because there are nuances too. There might be, this is where I come back to my swimming pool and beach ball analogy, which I haven't mentioned a lot this week. That is in the Healing Trauma video series that's free on my site. It's video number 1. So when we have this swimming, the analogy is there's a swimming pool, that's your body, and there's these beach balls in it. And the beach balls are the stressors and the traumas. And the beach balls can be all sorts of different sizes. And so as we begin this process of learning through SBSM, it might be that the first steps aren't taking out the beach balls, but it's making the swimming pool bigger. Yeah. Our capacity gets bigger. And then what happens? The beach balls have more space to flow in. We also might have new stresses that come in, but part of this SBSM journey is noticing in the moment, in the present, and on this day forward, going forward, whenever there's a stress, you pay attention to it, you process it, you feel it, so you don't have that beach ball, that trauma gets stuck in the pool. Yeah. As you get better at noticing things in the moment and growing your capacity, the old balls that have been in there for generations or your entire life, those layers, to use your word, come out. Sometimes you will have a monster of a ball come out that is like your core wound, and you might need a day, a week, a couple weeks to just really soothe, lick your wounds, feel the feels. And that might take longer, but that doesn't mean that's bad, because you've just excavated this massive core wound and there's this space and you're not used to that space. And so as you have more space, not only are your emotions going to feel different, but your whole physiology changes. Your digestion might shift, it might go off. Your sleep might shift, it might go off. You might want to be more social. You might want to be more introverted. You might want to just sit at home and like binge watch a funny show because you need good social funny engagement. Like how it takes to integrate these things is so individual. Yeah. And sometimes a layer is quick, and sometimes you can be so regulated and on your journey, and there's this hiding layer that you had no idea that was there. This is what's been occurring with me the last couple of years, and it will feel like the worst thing ever, but you go, no, my digestion is staying normal. I can sleep well at night. I have an appetite. I want to go outside, but there's this thing that I'm feeling that's so intense.
Mm.
So if you look at all your other pieces of physiology, like these are all actually doing really well. So this must just be a survival stress that's coming up that is old news and junk, and it's popping up.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, next question. I think we already answered that.
Yeah, we did. Yep.
We already answered hypnosis, so you'll have to go back.
Yep. Am I right in understanding that we can release emotions and stored stress without knowing or understanding it? The experience being pre-verbal. Yep, absolutely. That's one of the beautiful things about this approach to the work. It's not self-analysis, right? You don't have to understand it with your mind. So much of the wounding that we as a species have experienced is pre-verbal, is in often experiences that are normalized, medicalization of birth, things like that, early medical procedures, things, and then of course, parents that are chronically stressed or themselves unwell, which is so normal. All of these stressors and traumas are very often pre-verbal. And yes, this work, you don't have to understand it. You don't have to know it with your mind. You have to understand, I'd say, sort of the theory, like as Irene said, to like understand that this stuff can feel these ways. Very often, people who have no education or experience might have something come up organically for release, and they run to the hospital because they don't understand that they're just feeling a fascial breakup that's been braced for a year and it's trying to let go, and it feels like they're maybe having a heart attack.
Which is often in this area.
Which is often in this area because the chest will often hold grief and rage. So when you learn about the different types of somatic experiences that can occur when you're working through trauma, you become much more able to allow these sort of unknown experiences to just move through with acceptance and safety. There's weird things that you'll feel in this work that could send many people to the ER being scared, and it's actually the body healing. So yeah, these things arise and they can just be felt and allowed. Sometimes what may happen afterwards is you get some understanding. You may get a flash of memory or something that comes out of the blue, but sometimes not. Sometimes these things are from before we were forming memories, and they're just these raw, visceral experiences.
Yeah. And I want to define medicalization of birth because we use that term, but often we don't know what it means. I have done a video on it because most of us had that. Yep. You did.
That's the norm.
I did. So that means you're born in a hospital under unnatural light, fluorescent light. There's no sun. There's no fresh air. Your mother is lying on her back, which is not how really we're supposed to birth babies. I mean, maybe if you want to, but
it's not the ideal position.
It's not the ideal ergonomic position for the pelvis opening. You have strangers around you. You have beeping things. And when you come out, maybe forceps were used. So you have a shock trauma to your skull at such a young age. And you're often ripped apart from your mom way too early. What did you say about how long the placenta should
until it stops pulsing, at least. Like the umbilical cord should not be cut until it stops pulsing. It really should be at least an hour.
Which is crazy.
And it's usually cut right away. It's this violent rupture. You're taken away. You're laid on a cold scale. You're taken away from your mom right away. You should go immediately to the breast
with the umbilical cord
attached. Like that should be the only thing that's happening is safe, quiet, lovely connection with mama. I mean, there's so many ways that we've gotten away from how birth should be, and it's all normalized. So so often people will say, I don't think I had any early trauma. It's okay if you don't understand this, but we've put most humans through this process. And this is where attachment rupture comes in, why mothers can't bond. That is a trauma to have this baby that has been growing in her for 9 months ripped apart from her. And she can't form that bond. And then we wonder why moms struggle with depression after birth. It's chaotic, it's traumatic, it's not right. Now, I'm not saying that if there's a complication, a hospital can be a great place to be. You would not have survived if it wasn't for an incubator and all those things.
but it does come with a bit of a cost of having to clean up and heal that stuff later in life.
Well, and the question is, what was going on with my mom that I came out 6 weeks early in the first place?
Right. It's not normal.
Yeah.
Can I do the SBSM using smartphone only? Yeah, I'm someone who doesn't like using my smartphone because my eyes aren't the best, but we know of people who do. So, protect your eyes, all those sorts of things.
I'd say it's a bit easier.
It's easier on a computer or a tablet,
but it's totally doable.
Oh yeah. I saw. Do you think this will support us in anxiety around a zombie apocalypse?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. One could say it's happening right now.
Yeah, we got plenty of zombies around us.
So, but in all, seriousness, what happens when we become regulated and we become connected to ourselves and the natural living world? We see the stresses around us. We see the things that aggravate us and don't make sense. And they'll piss us off. Like, we're still human. We need to have some visceral reaction to things that maybe we don't agree with, but then we don't focus on it incessantly.
Yeah, and ruminate and
And we're just like, all we can think about is going back to that social media post and giving that person a piece of our mind and ruining our whole day, ruminating over the zombies or whatever you want to add. So I think it's important personally to not be ignorant to what's going on in our world. I think awareness is key. Have a healthy dose of that once in a while, but then really at the end of the day, the one thing you can control is you. That's it.
Yeah.
So work on you, and the rest actually gets a lot easier, zombies included. All right, do you want to get the next one?
You mentioned it's important to doing it slow and in your own pace. Do we learn how to tune into our limits in SBSM? I usually end up pushing through things until I eventually crash. Yeah, that's a very, very common story. And you'll hear us say it again and again and again and again. Discover your pace that's right for you. It's not something we can teach you because only you know. What we can teach you is the different signals that may happen that are indications that you may be going over your limits. But ultimately, it's going to be up to you to put into action that kind of information. Like, oh, I notice I'm starting to just go into my head and just in my thoughts, I'm starting to check out. Now I need to stop. Or I notice I'm starting to get tense and brace and rigid, or I'm getting angry or whatever the signal may be. There's a variety of ways in which our physiology will speak to us and say, hey, that's enough. And that is a process of discovery.
And you have to take ownership. Yeah. And so, you might find yourself, as Seth said, pushing, and we might say over and over again in many different ways, go at your own pace, titrate. But inevitably, you are the person that has to make the gear shift into neutral or from fifth gear into first gear. We can't go through the computer screen and pull you away from the audio exercise and say, stop that. Right? We can't do that. You have to, this comes back to the self-learning. You have to start to catch yourself. And maybe you go too far one day and that's fine, but you need to learn from your lessons, right? From the lessons that throw you into a bit more activation or shutdowns. Like, okay, that was too much. Next time I'm just going to do 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes. Okay.
That's what we responded to.
This one?
Yeah. Looks like Magda answered.
Yeah.
Just discovered your channel. My first memory is as a 2-year-old and mauled by a dog. Oh my gosh.
Ouch.
Is SBSM designed for this?
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's designed for any trauma. So that included, absolutely.
Yeah. And this, we get this asked a lot. I had this happen to me. I have this condition. I was raised in this situation. So every system, everybody, this is what's so weird about humans. We're all quite unique in how we were raised, even within the same family system. This is why this is so confusing at the start. If you have a herd of cattle or a pack of wolves, they treat their pups and cubs exactly the same. There's no differentiating factors if you're a pack of wolves in Russia versus Canada's north. Babies, cubs are treated the same way. They're fed in the same way. They're nurtured in the same way. We humans have a very strange situation where we raise babies differently and we have different traumas that just are so different. But it comes back down to working with the nervous system and restoring capacity, understanding, regulation, and moving through. If you have a memory, the memories of that shock and terror and horror, and then working with it in a way that doesn't push you out of your body and into freeze. Can SBSM help to regulate a nervous system that has been damaged by an alternative chiropractor who crashed my adrenals? I have chronic fatigue syndrome and cause severe insomnia with adrenaline surges at nighttime. So this will piggyback from what I just said to Patrick above about the dog mauling him when he was 2 is, and we have many people in SBSM and our courses whom were traumatized by practitioners.
That's the common thread, sadly.
And it's, one could say everyone's to blame, no one's to blame, but it's just where we're at. And so if we even take out alternative chiropractor and just say you have adrenals that are crashed, you have chronic fatigue and severe insomnia, those are dysregulations of the nervous system. And so we go back to the basics, the foundation building. Do you have anything else to say on that, Seth?
Well, just that you're not alone. I mean, this is one of the most common things we hear is I was screwed up by this practitioner, this ayahuasca ceremony,
breath work,
meditation, light work, whatever it was. There's so many practices out there that are not truly trauma informed and don't know how to work with trauma and blow people up. That's one of the most common things we hear.
You're not alone.
Nope.
You're not alone. Do you want to get this one?
I've now attempted SBSM twice and have only gotten to lab 3. I think I have a fear of and aversion to getting better. Do you have any advice on how to tackle this next round? Well, fear of getting better is normal first to understand because it means something different. And so often we get attached to the way things are, even if that is not the best. It's familiar, right? So have compassion for yourself and understanding that you're trying to cling to what's safe, what your persistent perceives as familiar and safe. Now, the first thing that I think when I see this is, well, you're an alumni, so you have access to all the program material. What might it be like to explore something from lab 5? Or lab 10, right? Like you don't have to.
Or listen to the training calls.
Just listen to the training calls. Listen to the Q&A calls. Maybe don't approach it as I have to do this linear one, and then I'm only going to get to this. Maybe you can break that by just, being spontaneous. Scroll through the lessons. What can you feel? What pulls you, right? There's many different ways to engage with the material as an alumni because you have all of it. It's an important thing to note, actually, for people to know when new members are coming into the site, they will only see what we release
week by week.
Week by week. That's all that will be visible to you. As an alumni, the whole site is visible to you, thanks to our tech team who figured out how to do that.
Wasn't easy.
No,
if I have anything else to say on this. Even the wording, how to tackle this the next round. We know, at least here in North America, what is a tackle? That's a that's a fight response. I'm going to go in like a gladiator. And what would it be like to not sit back, but kind of be a little less survival stress heavy on how you go in as opposed to tackle the material. And this reminds me back to my thing about how we have to relearn how to learn. Having been in university settings for many years and education and academia, sometimes you feel like you have to tackle a project because it just feels sludgy and hard. And so what if there's a reframe on, I said this to someone the other day on a 21-day call, like, can you go into a year from now, your future self, and have a talk with them, having been able to go through a little bit more of the program? Like, what does that feel like? What does that look like? How can it be a little less tackly and more creative, more, I don't like using the word light, but I will right now, a little more light, a little more effervescence. Back to that natural wonder that Seth was talking about when you're little and you're not traumatized. It's like, what would it be like to enter into the learning with that ease?
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm curious. What happens if I try checking this out over here? You know, yeah.
Okay. Can SBSM help with chronic fatigue syndrome?
Yep.
Yes. So this is a question we get a lot, and it's so important to understand. And we have an FAQ on the SBSM registration page that dives into this. Chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, autoimmune, migraine headaches, premenstrual, severe premenstrual syndrome, chronic anxiety, chronic depression. I mean, you name the thing. This is connected to dysregulation of the nervous system. These deeper syndromal representations like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, our mentors have found that they're deeply rooted in preverbal trauma and the autonomic nervous system cycling quickly between sympathetic fight flight and the deep shutdown of parasympathetic. When we get to the point of having chronic fatigue, typically it's not just that. There's gut issues, there's hormone issues, there's sleep issues. And so we need to restore more capacity and balance to the system so that the system can start to repair on its own. So the overarching answer is yes. And then, of course, you have to do the work. All right.
When the mind is really active, looping thoughts, preparing answers, being critical, negative, incessantly wanting novelty, is this conditioning?
Yes.
Part of being human or a trauma response? Yes, all three. It is conditioning, which is part of being human, and it's a trauma response, which is also part of being human. Yeah, so when your mind is doing that, that is the sympathetic nervous system represented by the thoughts. Your mind is in fight mode, right? Preparing strategies, marshaling your arguments. Yeah, it's just an expression of the fight response.
Yeah. It's kind of a cousin to ADD, ADHD, which is getting thrown out so much these days, which is, again, simply the system being in dysregulation and hyper alert to the environment and not being able to settle. So yeah, the novelty thing is the word that I like there, because we've been trained as little humans and big humans to constantly seek out novelty and new stuff. And what a lot of people struggle with, I found as adults, is the basic routines of daily living that keep us healthy and well. This is why there's an entire diet industry, an entire exercise industry, all the industries that try to give humans better behaviors to take care of themselves is essentially them working with people who don't have regulation and internal drive and the ability to just kind of be routine and just take care of things day to day. So I wanted to add that in there.
What would be the difference between this program and trying to piece together learning from YouTube? Night and day.
Yeah.
So Irene's videos on YouTube are mostly educational. There's one playlist of practical neurosensory exercises, which you can find on her channel. But you can do a lot that way. You can learn a lot that way for sure. But you're not going to get the sort of sequenced, structured learning that this curriculum is providing. And you're not going to have access to the neurosensory exercises. Like we said, there's 36 of them. So it's a lot.
It is different. And, really see SBSM. It's like going to a semester of university or college. You're learning deep practical pieces. Just like I can't become a medical doctor by listening to medical doctors talk about specific procedures on YouTube. We can't, at least in the way that we form this, you need to be in a container, being guided, and also support. That's something we haven't mentioned that. So one thing that's very important to know is when you're being supported by our team, there are, is it 9? I always forget it because you're not really in the main moderation anymore. You do Q&A calls. So there's like 10-ish moderators who are trained in somatic experiencing and a lot of other somatic practices. These are high-level career practitioners that have been doing this work for years. They are in the forums every single lesson every single lab has threads devoted to each lesson where you can ask questions of my amazing team. We're in there 7 days a week, most days twice a day. Someone is in there on shift answering questions. These are not volunteers. This is like a real job for them. And their job is to help you engage with the material in an easier way and to answer your questions around that. So that's super important for you to know, is that we have support. You're not just left to swim on your own. We've got guides. That being said, they're not there to do therapy with you. They're not there to give you consultation on specific health problems. They're there to help you with the material. And so the reason I wanted to say that is because when you engage with the learning and you ask for help, good stuff happens, right? Because it's that engagement with it that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any feedback about SBSM and eating disorders? Sure. So I actually just listened to not an interview, it was a video review of our program. One of our members was talking about SBSM and how it's helped her. Now, one of the things she mentioned, she did not have a specific eating disorder, and I'll talk about that in a second, but she knew that she ate when under stress from social situations due to her trauma in her family system. When she would have a work function, she would come home and realize how stressed she was, and she'd go right to the fridge. And we can post that. It's a talk with Mary Tulin, one of our members and affiliates. She would, like, her thing was peanut butter, toast, and jam. So I guess toast with peanut butter and jam. I get it. It's yummy. It's crunchy. But what she noticed is as she started to do SBSM, because she was more tuned to her body, she would feel the little burgeoning fight, flight, survival stresses that were leading her to want to eat toast. And so she would sense these and she'd be like, I'm stressed right now. That thing activated me, but I'm not hungry. She would then go into her mind and say, I ate dinner before this thing. I'm actually not hungry. And then what she would often do, is she shared, is she would do one of the neurosensory exercises. And she would divert her focus to the rest of her body, so she would bring her capacity back. So from what I know in working with people who have had eating disorders, they are a response to us feeling often out of control. And so what is one way to control what we put in our mouth? We either don't put anything in our mouth or we put too much in our mouth. And so when we can get back into the body and really listen to it and not react, these disorders shift. Do you have anything else to say?
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Just a quick one that I saw further about birth trauma. I once felt like something is trying to rip out my clavicle. Could that have been like a birth trauma thing? Yeah, for sure. Maybe forceps were used, or maybe you were pulled out too violently. Absolutely. These types of somatic imprints can stay from infancy, and they can arise in strange ways.
I don't know what this.
About an hour and a half.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up soon. Let's finish on this one. We haven't talked about relationships.
Sure.
Oops.
Go ahead.
What's that? Oh, if my spouse has anger issues, if my spouse has anger issues that freeze me, is it worth attempting SBSM? So there's a few pieces to this question. So the first question is, do you want to be with your spouse? I can't tell you that. You have to know that. Do you like them? Do you want to be with them? Is the anger at you? Is it violent towards you? So that is one situation that must be dealt with. And, we don't want to stay in a situation where there's violence and we're being harmed. Let's say that that's not the case. And the anger is them, him, her, just getting angry, but not at you. But it freezes you. Yes, it is worth attempting SBSM, I think, but what you may start to realize is that it will become harder to be connected in that relationship because you will just be too darn triggered and you will not stay in freeze. And this is where we might start expressing our boundaries, and then our partner might not like that.
Yeah.
And that's where it can get a bit sticky and tricky because they're not expecting you to say, hey, stop that. Or maybe they are like, they need that. Maybe they need someone to tell them to shut the F up and take a second. You know, maybe that person, when they were young, they never were helped when they were angry or when they were scared. And that's the only default they have. So relationships are tricky because we have two people that probably had totally two different upbringings. They're living in two different survival situations inside. And my experience is if your partner is not in any way interested in self-development and healing, it becomes really hard for you to do this work yourself. And inevitably, we have seen people in SBSM part ways. We've also had people in SBSM fall in love with their soulmates because they're living their true life in alignment and authenticity, and they're going where they're supposed to go. And then they find, I mean, that's what happened with Seth.
Yeah.
Right? That happens. So do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, you know, spouses is a tricky one because if we're not on the same page with our primary person that we're living with in terms of this work and doing it, it can be tough. I mean, at the least, it's essential that they are supportive. If they're not doing the work themselves, it has to be a person that you feel safe to express. Maybe you make weird sounds. Maybe you need to move your body in a way that maybe looks strange. There's all sorts of, like I said, weird experiences that come with this somatic approach to trauma healing, where the body wants to do stuff, and we need to feel free to allow our body to do that stuff. And if we're going to feel like we have to repress it, or we're going to get shamed or judged, it's not going to work. Yeah. So you can certainly start the work if you're in a relationship that's maybe not the best. It may be that it will help your relationship. Yeah, maybe when you allow a little healthy aggression and boundaries to emerge from under that freeze, that will change the dynamic in a way that's good for your partner. Or it may end the relationship. That happens a lot. Yeah. It's just the way it is. Like I said before, you have less tolerance for things and people and situations that are not good for you. And if the relationship doesn't change and it just is not good for you, then yeah, it's not sustainable, and that happens.
And the work and what you gain and learn in SBSM is not in a vacuum. And so I think one of the things I saw hardest for some of my private clients when I worked with them is nothing shifted when they left my office. They had big shifts in the office, and then they go back into their abusive, lacking connection relationship, and then they'd be thrown back into their survival stress. So this becomes a lifestyle when you really live it, and you can't hide your natural truth when you're living in your world. You might be able to do that in a job to save face, and you need to do this thing, but when you're in your personal environment living with someone, in my opinion, it is impossible to do this work just when you're in your room, and when you go out into the kitchen and living room, you shift yourself. Yeah. It will become actually harder to live like that when you gain more awareness and more understanding of this stuff.
Yeah.
So the last question I'll say, does trauma work help blood pressure issues? It definitely can. It has to come at this nervous system level though, right? So again, this falls into, will this work help with XYZ? Typically, yes, it does, but it means getting full use of all of your nervous system pieces, understanding all these pieces, and restoring regulation. So I'm going to end it because we're past 90 minutes. Reminder, today is the final day for this year to become a member of Smartbody SmartMind. If you know in your gut, even a little bit, that this is something you want to do and you can do it, you have the resources to do it, I so welcome you to join. It is an investment, and it is something you will have for the rest of your life. Granted, you put in the work. right? So that's the key. If you have any follow-up questions, send them to our support@irenelyon.com. You can pop a comment here on the video and we'll do our best to get to them, but really email is one of the better ways. And don't forget, the website has a whole FAQ page with tons of commonly asked questions. Pause, take your time to go there, read through them to see if some questions that you have are in that page, on that page. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Maybe we'll see you on Thursday. Our first call is orientation call on Thursday the 21st, and then the first module starts on Sunday the 24th.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody here. Thanks to our alumni who are listening to this as well, and we will see you later. Bye.